Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on depression as it pertains to being a public health issue. Obviously, this is presented by me, Braxton Brushke, in the public health class 205. And let's get on to the first slide. So first off, I'd like to start with defining depression. Um, Depression is kind of related and defined in a couple subcategories, but first it is a mood disorder that can cause either persistent feelings of loneliness, feeling down, feeling just very low emotionally. And these can also come with feelings of sadness or loss of interest. And next, there's also other things and other categories of depression that are called major depressive disorders or clinical depression, which are a little different than just the specific term of depression, but they're all really tied in together. So depression really just affects how you feel and how you behave. It can affect what you do in your daily life, the decisions you make, um, you know, your mood, which can greatly affect these things as well. But overall, it can be a great hindrance on the things you do throughout the day and your ability to really get things done and how you feel as well. Leading into that, like I said, it can also cause issues in behavior and function, which can be very detrimental to a person's overall health. Next, I'd like to go into the causes of depression that are related to medicine. Um, as it pertains to prescribed medicine, medicine like narcotics, perhaps for pain or for surgeries, these types of medicines can greatly influence depression and perhaps cause addictions, which can also lead to high probabilities of depression as well. Next, I'd like to go into the topic of steroids, which can be used by many groups of people, such as um, men or women who are into weightlifting or bodybuilding or want to use these steroids to enhance their physique. These can lead into other categories of depression and cause them as well. Or another example can be steroids that are used for pain or used for procedures that can also cause depression within um, the significant amounts of steroids that someone's taking. Next, I'd like to go into hormone medicine, such as hormone blockers, beta blockers. These types of drugs can be used for people that already have depression issues, but the use of changing your hormones through ways of medicine are very detrimental to someone's overall brain chemistry and physical health because it dramatically changes how their brain works and how they think. So that's why beta blockers or hormone blockers or any really medicine that changes hormones can be a great detriment to someone's overall health and cause depression. And lastly, I'd like to talk about how drugs such as cocaine, fentanyl, any type of hard drugs, or maybe just other drugs such as weed, marijuana, or maybe just drinking alcohol, those types of drugs can really cause or enhance someone's feeling of depression and kind of drive them down the road of being in a deep, dark place. And that's why drugs are not recommended at all, specifically those hard drugs for people dealing with depression or trying to prevent depression as well. Next, I'd like to talk about the situational depression issues. And first off, I'd like to kind of specify what situational depression is rather than just clinical depression. Situational depression is things that are really caused by the outside environment and not just your brain chemistry changing in a way that causes you to be oppressed. It's more about your situation and the things around you that are causing you to be sad or feel down. And first off, one of these include grief, which is, say, for example, a family member passes away, or your dad just passed away, or your cousin. Any of these grief situations where you're longing for a specific thing or individual, that is greatly associated with causing depression. Next, I'd like to talk about abuse, perhaps maybe in a relationship or by, your father or mother, or a boyfriend, or any sort of abuse related, either physical or mental, by the way. This can also lead into depression because you feel stuck or like you're in a prison where you can't leave. Next is relationship issues, which are linked and correlated very well to depression issues because relationships are either short term, but they can also be very long term. And you also have the same feeling of being stuck while you're in relationships dealing with these issues, such as, for example, if you have kids and you're married and you get cheated on and you don't want to divorce your wife because she'll take your kids, that sort of situation can lead into depression. Next, I'd like to talk about infertility, such as losing a child. That specifically for women and not as much for men, but it can also happen for them. That can also lead into depression and sadness because no one is really meant to deal with that sort of issue. Next, I'd like to talk about how depression affects suicide. Overall, suicide rates are increasing in the 50s, or since the 50s, they have been up 80% from what they were almost 70 years ago. Also, the U.S. is one of the leading categories, or leading countries rather, for suicide, which, by the way, suicide is a direct correlation from depression. They're not the same thing, but they are interchangeable, and depression is a sign of or cause of suicide. Also, depression is now the second leading cause of death in the United States, or sorry, suicide rather, is now the second leading cause of depression or cause of death in the United States, up from 40th, what it was 40 years ago as well. So next I'd like to talk about some prevention and help strategies, and these include things like therapy, which has been proven to be very beneficial, regulated antidepressant medication, which, not to mix up with the other medication that was presented earlier on in the PowerPoint, these antidepressants are proven to be helpful for depression, but also should not be abused as they can have an opposite effect. Also, proper sleep and stress management are also very helpful for dealing or preventing with depression because being more orderly and having things in place and not being stressed can help with not feeling down all the time because you feel like you have things to do, and depression won't get you down as easy. So lastly, I'd like to talk about some concluding ideas, which include things like, honestly, depression is becoming a problem as proven by the statistics from the 1950s to today's time. The statistics are proven that it's up almost 50% in total from what it was, so it really needs to be treated as of today. It's also not treated well enough because most people who have depression aren't really cited for it. There aren't a lot of ways to deal with it other than going to therapy and getting medication, which oftentimes isn't as helpful as it should be. Again, there are a lot of underlying causes like medication, abuse, and all these other factors that play into depression, which need to be highlighted more in order for depression to not be as harmful as it is today. Depression also needs to be treated correctly or it will be worsened, as I said, or stated rather before. If depression is treated in the wrong ways, like over-medicating or seeing a therapist too often and relying on that too much, or relying on drugs or relying on other people, depression will not get better and actually get much worse, as it is a mental issue and biological issue within the brain that can be treated. So lastly, I'd like to end off with a quote from Susan Polish Schultz that says, "Getting better from depression demands a lifelong commitment. I've made that commitment for my life's sake and for the sake of those who love me." And that really is the deciding factor of depression. It is a one-on-one thing. It is a issue within yourself, and it is necessary to be treated. And then lastly, I have my slides, or references rather, on this last slide that state the pictures and the links as well. So thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and have a great day. I hope you learned something.